Welcome to the Story Learning Podcast, regular doses of language learning tips and motivation to help you become fluent in any language. With me, Olly Richards. For language programs, books, free resources, and much more, visit StoryLearning.com. Hello and welcome back to the show. This is the I Will Teach You a Language podcast, bi-weekly episodes to keep you motivated along your language learning journey. And I don't know about you, but just getting towards the end of the year now, I've already started to find myself thinking about my goals for next year, even though I'm not actually a huge fan of New Year's resolutions, because I kind of feel that language goals and goal setting and things like this is something we should be doing on a regular basis, not just on the new year. But nevertheless, it is an opportunity to sit back and think, right, what do I really want? How's this year been? What am I going to aim for next year? So, what have you guys been thinking about? What is the thing that you really want to look back on at the end of next year, end of 2016, and say, you know what, I did that this year and it was awesome. Something to think about. So before we dive into today's question, now without any further ado, let's dive into today's question from Alan.
Hi, Ollie. I'm Alan from Taiwan. I have a question of language learning foundations course. When you say do not learn more than one language if you are getting used to one of them. Now I want to arrange a frequently session in Japanese on italki 3 times per week, and I want to know, can I learn French at the same time? Because I know both of them are not in the same language partners, so I think it's okay. But I'm a Chinese native speaker and I want to learn 2 of them. My schedule is Monday, Wednesday, and Friday are Japanese speaking sessions. Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday are French-speaking sessions. Does it make sense? Or it's not a good idea to learn both of them? Thank you, Ollie.
Okay, Alan, thank you very much for a great question. So this comes up time and time again, doesn't it? Can you learn 2 languages at the same time? It seems that you guys know what I think about this topic now, but it seems that no one wants to listen to me. So I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach this time, and I'm going to look at the opportunities in learning 2 languages and how you might be able to do it to best effect, and some of the pros of learning 2 languages at the same time. So, can you learn 2 languages at the same time? Yes, you can. Obviously, you can learn as many languages at the same time as you want. 2 is certainly possible. Does it depend on the language? Now, Alan was kind of intimating that because he wants to learn Japanese and French, that it would be easier because they're 2 very different languages. And I think you're absolutely right. If the languages that you're going to pick are from 2 different language families, that they're not closely related, that is much easier for you than if you were going to pick 2 languages from the same language family. Because one of the big problems with learning multiple languages is that you confuse words, phrases, verbs between the 2 languages. And for me, I always think back to my early days of learning languages, and I had been studying Italian for some time, could speak it really well, and I spent a bit of time in Italy, and then I went back to London, and I had made some Spanish friends and started learning Spanish. Now, as you may know, Spanish and Italian are extremely closely related languages, and with my change in circumstances, I went back to London. I stopped speaking Italian, didn't have any Italian friends. I started speaking lots of Spanish, and within 6 months, I'd forgotten all of my Italian. And the reason is because the languages are so similar. There are so many words which are virtually identical with a few minor tweaks between the languages, that you kind of get to this point where you're thinking, oh, was it that or was it this? Or, what was it? How do you say that? And so I forgot my Italian very, very quickly, and it came from the confusion with the Spanish. But that doesn't happen with languages. Doesn't happen so much anyway with languages that are very different. And over the last year, I've spent time learning both Arabic and Cantonese, and I'd say there's virtually no confusion between the 2 whatsoever. I would find myself, for example, sometimes speaking Cantonese and a few Arabic words would slip out. But that's more from kind of force of habit, not because I'm confusing the 2 languages. You couldn't really get more different languages than Cantonese and Arabic. So, the more different the languages are, the easier it's going to be. So yeah, if you were going to learn two languages, Alan, I think Japanese and French would be a great combination because they have nothing to do with each other whatsoever. From a kind of modern linguistic point of view, anyway. I don't know about the roots. I don't believe there are any connections. But yeah, linguistically speaking, in terms of how you use both of the languages, they're totally separate. So you're not going to find yourself getting too confused between the two. So I think that's a great combination. Other combinations might be German and Arabic, Spanish and Mongolian, Finnish and Swahili. Any languages from different families would be fine to learn. Combinations to avoid would be, for example, Spanish and Italian, Spanish and Portuguese, Cantonese and Mandarin, possibly something like Vietnamese and Thai because of the tonal aspect of it. You might find yourself getting muddled up between the tones of the two. Maybe something like a couple of Eastern European languages, perhaps that have a very similar Slavic root. So, yeah. Now, I mean, the caveat here is that if you've learned one language, that makes it a lot easier to learn another similar language afterwards. So if you've already learned Spanish, for example, it's very easy to learn Italian. If you've already learned Cantonese, it's very easy to learn Mandarin, just not at the same time. All right. So if you choose to learn two languages at the same time, what are the advantages that you have? Well, you can, if you have success in one aspect of one language, you can try and apply that same success to the other one. So if you figured out a great way of learning, memorizing vocabulary in French, you can take those same strategies to memorize vocabulary in Japanese, for example. So there's a lot of kind of cross-pollination of skills, transferable skills there. You also get to learn about two different cultures at the same time. So, in terms of learning about the world and stuff like that, then by immersing yourself in two languages, you are kind of doubling the amount of exposure, I guess, that you're getting to the rest of the world, which is a fantastic thing. You also learn more about, I guess, some particular aspects of language learning. So, getting to grips with French is very different to getting to grips with Japanese. So you would become familiar more quickly with different types of languages and how they're constructed. And also in terms of, your own passions. If you're passionate about learning French and Japanese, then yeah, absolutely, go for it. It's really important that we do things that we want to do and we sort of satisfy our passions. So those are the pros. There are cons, and I can't let this episode go by without addressing some of the issues here, because you can't get away from the fact that if you are studying two languages, then you are splitting in half by 50% the time that you could be spending on one. All right, which means, so when you're spending only half the time on one language, obviously you're going to make a lot less progress than if you're spending all your time on one language. All right. I would also say that one of the most important elements in learning to speak a new language quickly is to immerse yourself in the language and to really, get that, what I like to call struggle. Struggle is essential, and struggle comes from kind of pushing yourself and immersing yourself so much in a language that your head starts to hurt, you get headaches, you think, oh, I can't handle this anymore. That's exactly the kind of time when you actually learn the most, because your zone of comfort is expanding, your brain is adapting to take on the new language. This kind of struggle and immersion and total immersion in the language is what really helps you push forward. And when you're trying to learn two languages, you can't reach that same stage of immersion and struggle with the two languages at the same time. So again, it makes learning less effective. So you have to balance that, really. It's your own personal choice how you balance that. Again, personally for me, because I like to learn to speak a language well and as quickly as possible, I focus on one language. If you're more concerned with learning about two different languages and getting a feel for them, satisfying your curiosity, then absolutely go for two. Just be aware, or even three, just be aware that you will not be able to make as quick progress as with one. One potential option for you is to take an 80-20 approach to learning two languages. So, Alan, in your case, you could, for example, say, all right, my the language that's most important for me is French, so I'm going to spend 80% of my time on French, and then which allows you to get quite a bit of immersion. And then 20% of your time on Japanese, just to kind of do a little bit so you don't feel like you're ignoring it, but you're kind of also keeping it up in a small way. That's one potential way of doing it. I think it's probably more effective than doing 50-50, because in one of your languages, the one that you spend 80% of your time on, you will, make some good solid progress. So I hope that helps. It's not a new topic, but it is a kind of different take on the same one. So I hope that's insightful for you guys. If you'd like to ask me a question like Alan did, you can do it right now. You can literally just whip out your phone or open up your laptop and go to iwillteachyoualanguage.com/ask. I'd love to hear from you. And I'm going to leave you today with a quote. In fact, when I first started the podcast, I did aim to do something slightly different at the end of every episode. I've been focusing on resources recently, but I'm going to leave you with a quote today from a guy called Greg Anderson. And I don't know who that is, full disclosure, but he has a great quote, which is very relevant to today's topic, which is, "Focus on the journey, not on the destination. Joy is not found in completing an activity, but in doing it." So some wise words there for you, Alan. I think that speaks very nicely to what you are wanting to do. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode of the podcast.
Thanks for listening to today's episode, and in case you didn't already know, I teach languages in a rather unusual way through stories. Now, stories are a great way to learn a new language because when you're engrossed in a story, you remember things more easily, and the mechanics of the language just start clicking inside your brain. It's quite something, and if you'd like to find out how you can learn a new language or improve your skills in a language that you already know and do it with the power of stories, then you should check out my free Story Learning Kit, which will teach you exactly how this method works and how you can use it yourself to learn a new language. Visit storylearning.com/podkit, that's PODKIT, to get free access. Inside, you'll find explanatory videos, masterclasses, worksheets, short stories to practice with, and much, much more. Once again, that is storylearning.com/podkit, PODKIT. And if you're lucky, you might also find a link in the podcast description or show notes of this episode.